Chapter 1. A Team Assembles. The wind swept the fallen leaves across the coarse dirt roads of town as Rakan gracefully dismounted his horse. Before him stood a weathered building, standing as a somber testament to the value of tradition and legacy held in the small town of Evandale. The crimson sunset only served to intensify the feeling of timeless charm of the tradesman inn. It was with a subtle feeling of regret that Rakan hitched his horse to the post and approached the open door. Though met immediately with the din of a busy tavern at the beginning of their peak hours, Rakan was hesitant to enter. He had relished the freedom of the open sky the last few nights. It had been many years since he had left the king's side in the walled city of Tarmanvale, so long that he had forgotten the quiet peace of the forest at night, so long that he had forgotten the relief and joy of successfully hunting the day's meal, and the raw and beautiful taste of meat cooked with naught but salt over an open fire. Still, he could not forget the reason he had been sent on this 3-day journey to the smoky tavern. The king had sent him as a representative to this meeting, and he intended to serve his king well. King Erigil, since claiming his throne in the heat of the war, had served with a quiet ferocity tempered by wisdom that none could help but admire. He had done much to rebuild the kingdom of men, and had thus earned the loyalty of those who served him, especially Rakan. Rakan's senses were assaulted upon entering the crowded inn. Despite the relatively small size of Evandale, it was situated in the middle of 4 highly traveled trade routes, making their inn one of the most prosperous in the land. This prosperity only increased now that there was a pervasive peace all around. His ears were battered by noise, from the older, tired men in the corners talking loudly over the rabble and rolling their eyes, to the young men bellowing drinking songs from the tops of tables. The aroma of smoke from the many smoking pipes scattered throughout the room met his nose with a potent but pleasant smell. Waiters and waitresses busily scurried throughout the room, distributing drinks at a harried pace. The room was beginning to fill with a soft light from the oil lanterns placed along the wall, just being lit in anticipation of the coming dark of night. In front of Rakan was a dark and worn chest-high desk, covered with paperwork strewn about haphazardly. Behind this stood a broad-chested man with tired eyes but a wide smile across his face. "Evening, good sir. How can this humble innkeeper serve you this fine evening? You've got a look of a traveler about you. We have a few rooms left this evening. Shall I prepare you one while I have someone fetch you some ale?" he said with endearing warmth. "Prepare me a room for the night," Rakan said, smiling politely at the man as he placed gold pennies on the desk in front of him. "Could you take me to Caden? I was summoned to meet with him this evening, and I am loath to keep him waiting." The man nodded appreciatively and pointed Rakan to a doorway on the far left wall, across the smattering of small tables throughout the open dining hall. Rakan thanked the man and began to weave his way across the crowded room. Most accommodated him pleasantly, while still others shot him glances of depreciation as he disturbed their revelry. After emerging triumphantly out of the other side of the crowd, Rakan pulled open the door to a much different atmosphere. Smoke trailed into the otherwise smokeless room through the door as he opened it, turning the heads of those present. Before him was a long table set with candles and adorned with fine centerpieces. On the far end of the table to his right sat an aged man dressed in full plate armor, worn and dented in places, with a subtle black cape hanging from his rigid shoulders. The man sat straight with his hands clasped together on the table in front of him, his face holding a rigid and determined look as he gazed at the newcomer. "Hail, stranger," the man said in a rough and deep voice. "Do you come invited, or have you come to disturb our meeting?" He eyed Rakan suspiciously, awaiting an answer. "I come by the invitation of King Erigil himself," Rakan said, reaching into his cloak and producing a letter. "Are you Caden?" "Indeed I am," he replied, his expression unwavering. "Take your seat, and we can get this meeting started." Caden motioned toward the only empty chair at the table. Rakan quickly surveyed the diverse groups seated at the table before him. At Caden's right hand sat a magi in deep blue robes. His eyes were half shut, seemingly as an attempt to exude an air of wisdom and sophistication. This was exacerbated as he lifted his hand and stroked his bare chin. His skin was dark like all of the members of the magi race, and his eyes glimmered like gemstones in contrast, even in the dimly lit room. Across from the magi sat a man that Rakan could swear he recognized from the royal courts. He remembered King Erigil mentioning something about sending a lord. This lord sat adorned in a fine purple robe with gold filaments adorning their edges. Beneath this he wore a pale blue tunic of equal finery. He held his head high, displaying his well-groomed beard proudly, which matched his deep brown hair. He took a hearty swig of his ale, keeping his shoulders square and confident. There sat beside him another magi, this one wearing a wide-eyed look of excitement across his bright features. His eyes seemed to dart around at his fellow guests, as if trying to take them all in at once. This magi wore on his shoulders a deep brown cloak, which bore the mark of a crimson hand on the right shoulder. Another magi, this one female, wore a matching cloak, as did yet another male magi to the right of the seat Rakan was asked to take. At the end of the table, on the opposite side of Rakan, sat a dweller, his shoulders high in a vain attempt to match the height of his companions of other species. On his face he wore a wild brown beard, knotted and frayed every which way. He continued to roll his axe in his hand, despite everyone else at the table having placed their weapons aside. Finally, at the far end of Rakan's side of the table sat a mysterious figure, the hood of their green cloak obscuring their features. Rakan took his chair beside the robed magi and folded his hands on the table in front of him. As he did, the magi across the table waved his hand and eyed the newcomer with excitement. "Hail there, stranger! My name is Adamir of the Hand of—" he began, before Caden shot him a quick glance of derision, silencing him. "A moment of peace, Master Magi, I insist," he growled. "I have not called the eight of you here for idle chatter. We should deal with business as soon as possible, lest we waste away the evening as you indulge your curiosity with every living thing that enters the room." He let the room remain silent for a moment, as if to give gravity to his words. "Before I begin," he eventually said, "it is necessary that we introduce ourselves to one another. I admonish you to please do this in an orderly fashion and to keep your introductions brief, as we have much to discuss. I am Caden, son of Cade, a renowned warrior in his own right. I have been a friend and trusted advisor to many of the great leaders of this world, even if now they choose to forget it." Rakan could hear bitterness creeping into his voice. Caden motioned with his hand to the smartly dressed man on his left. "My thanks, most gracious host," the man said, inclining his head and speaking with an elegant, if not a little slurred, tone. "I am Lord Belethor, and I serve the great King Aragil with gladness. It is he who summoned me here to attend this meeting. Might I say he spoke most highly of you, good sir." Caden seemed to entirely ignore the praise of the man, maintaining still the same flat, unimpressed expression he had worn on his face since Rakan had entered the room. Belethor sat back in his chair, appearing pleased with his own introduction. As he did so, the magi beside him perked up with excitement as it became clear that his turn to speak had come. Rakan could swear that he saw Caden shift uneasily in his chair from the corner of his eye. "Hey everyone, I'm so excited to be here. My name is Adamir of the Hand of Fire. I was sent here by Peleus, the leader of our order. Did you know he used to travel with Caden? You know, back before the whole Hand of Fire thing. Yeah, they were good buddies and stuff. That's probably why Peleus sent so many people to this meeting, you know, because he trusts Caden and stuff. This is the first time in a while that I've come to a human settlement. They are so strange, the way you cut up the trees instead of building inside of the—" "Enough," said Caden with quiet authority, quickly silencing the excitable magi. "I am Lorinar," the female magi beside him said, leaning forward. "I too was sent from the Hand of Fire by our leader Peleus." "I as well," said the third magi in matching dress to the others, "was sent by Peleus on behalf of the Hand of Fire. My name is Nolandil. It is a pleasure for us to be in your service, as we have heard much about you." He finished by inclining his head to the end of the table, giving sign to the hooded figure that it was their turn to speak. This figure then proceeded to lower their hood, revealing the fair female features that had been obscured before, as well as her short and poorly cut hair. This woman had darker skin and bright eyes of a magi. This was contrasted by her strong features that betrayed a human ancestry. Rakan recognized that this woman was in fact a half-magi, born of both human and magi blood. He knew well the look, as it was the look his own children shared. "My name is Mireth. I come from the lands of Elimbra, and I was recruited on reputation alone by Caden himself," she said quietly. The half-blood then quickly drew her hood up around her face and withdrew back in her chair, once again obscuring her fair features. "Humph! There are too many pointy ears here for my liking," grumbled the dweller next to her. "They call me Dervish, and Balman was my father. I was sent by the head of my tribe Thorn on the insistence that he trusts this short beard that gathered us. I am a blacksmith by trade, but a right bit handy with an axe, if I do say so myself. He punctuated the end of his introduction by slamming down the end of his axe on the wood floor of the tavern. A moment later the doors swung open, and an inquiring waitress was disappointed to learn that they had no need of her service at the moment. Following her apology and exit, it came time for Rakan to introduce himself. I am Rakan, Hand of the King. I was sent here on the king's behalf to investigate Caden's claims to appraise whether they were indeed worthy of his majesty's attention. I am honor bound to complete my mission to the best of my ability, in the way I would believe would please the king. Satisfied that he had said all they needed to know, Rakan nodded to the robed magi beside him. The magi first cleared his throat, an evident air of importance behind his every move. He looked into everyone's eyes in turn, leaving a moment of silence before speaking. Elysian is my name, traveling wizard and advisor to Caden. He came to me personally to ask of my service. I trust his word regarding the danger that faces us all. Danger? There's danger? Adamir said, eyes widening. What kind of danger? Like, are we going to have to fight Dash and... Of course there's danger, Dervish interrupted. Why the heck else will they gather a team of warriors together in this stinking tavern? Now, would you just let the man explain himself before you go on another tirade? Rakan couldn't help but feel the edges of his lips curl in a suppressed smile as the embarrassed magi looked at Caden and then sheepishly stared down at the table in front of him, color flooding his cheeks. Now that we are finished with necessary pleasantries and introductions, Caden began, we can finally get to the heart of this matter. I am sure all of you are eager to learn for what purpose I have called you all to travel far from your homes to meet in a seedy tavern. Let me assure you, I do not call this meeting casually. For years now, Cosmea has lavished in a much-deserved time of peace. The king has built his kingdom, and prosperity has been the rule as of late. I come to you now as a herald to the end of that peace. Silence fell as Caden allowed his words to resound on empty air. Even Adamir remained still and contemplative at the declaration. The bustle of the busy tavern continued muted in the background. These concerns I have brought before Cosmea's greatest leaders, but they have fallen on deaf ears. Despite their claims to have great trust in my word, they will not take what I have heard at face value. This is because I am one man, and have little to go on save my intuition and whispers in the wilds. But rest assured that I know deeply in my heart that there is a great evil stirring in the Desh Mountains. Groups of Desh have been seen at levels of activity unheard of in recent years. All of them seem to sneer and laugh at us, sharing some joy at knowing behind our backs of a danger we cannot fathom. He paused and eyed everyone in the room. It is for this reason that I have called to my aid the best that my trusted allies could send me. I need for you to confirm my suspicions. I need for you to enter the mountains, to scour them for any signs of renewed activity among the Desh, and I need you to enter the halls of Malsheth and see with your own eyes what lies within. He sat back in his chair and waited, letting those at the table process the weight of his concerns. Rakan felt growing within him a sense of foreboding, a deep worry about what might lay waiting for them if they should accept and go forward into those dark mountains. And what if, after many weeks' journey, we reach these halls and find out that our search has been for naught, and we have nothing but wasted time to show for it? Dervish asked with a scowl. Then I will breathe a sigh of relief that my suspicions were proven wrong, and pay you handsomely for the inconvenience. Caden replied curtly, returning his gaze with intensity. And if we find the worst to be true? Asked Adamir. Then you return with haste to your peoples, and pray that these peaceful lands are prepared for war. Rakan sat in the corner of his dark room at the inn, naught but the light of his pipe lending eerie amber glow when he dragged on it. His mind was flooded with the possibilities, his heart filled with dread despite his attempts to remain calm. He had tried to sleep, but it continued to elude him until at last he gave up and lit his pipe. He thought about how long it had been since he had at last faced danger in earnest, not since the war had passed and his beloved had died. Aragil had granted him a position of relative leisure, gifting him time to be a father to his 3 sons. He wondered now if his excitement at the chance to relive his adventurous days was unwarranted. He thought of his sons and how hurt they would be if he were lost. He thought of the real possibility that if the worst happened, he may never see them again. His heart raced and despair began to master him when he shook his head and rediscovered his resolve. He could not lose heart now. He had to remember why it was he swore fealty to the king and fought in his service for all these years. It was not for the comfort of wealth and the power of position. It was not for the king's regard and for a lasting legacy. He fought for the safety of his people. He fought for the lives of those he loved. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and comment down below what character you find the most intriguing so far. Till next time.